gosu.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Learn Some Dota 2 presented by gosu.com. I am Jeff, the site's editor-in-chief, and today we're going to be talking about tower diving. Past two videos that I've done have focused on specific heroes, but I thought instead today I would focus on a broader concept, something that comes up a lot in pub games. The purpose of this show is really for people to take novice pub play up to intermediate level to solid play, and then use that as a stepping stone to get really, really good at Dota 2. So tower diving is one of those things that's handled in competitive games with tons of finesse, pre-planning, foresight, and is really just a beautiful thing to watch. In pub games, it tends to be handled with recklessly disastrous abandon. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the mentality that one should have when you're attempting a tower dive and how to increase your chances of successfully tower diving an enemy hero. Tower diving, at the end of the day, like everything in Dota, is more of an art than a science. So even though there aren't really any perfect rules or laws that you can follow, there are definitely, with all good art forms, some guidelines that will help. So let's start with a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself before you tower dive. Now, obviously, a lot of decisions in Dota happen in the moment, but if you can at least get maybe one or two of these passing through your head before you just press that YOLO button, it'll end up being very, very helpful for your play. So the first question you need to ask yourself, and this is something that we talked about a little bit in the Drow video, is what's more important to me and my team right now? Getting kills or staying alive? And in order to answer that question properly, you have to have a solid understanding of your team and your enemy's team. For example, if you're playing a hero that's really going to be much more powerful late game, that needs a lot of farm early, you might want to hesitate a lot more before tower diving. If the hero you're tower diving against, however, is a similar hero, and you're playing, more of a mid-game ganker, or a hero whose utility is increased early, a support, an int hero that has lots of good spells, then it might be worth it for you to take that risk and go ahead and tower dive. So definitely have the circumstances of the game in mind. The second question you want to ask yourself is, can I or my teammates who are with me do guaranteed damage in this situation? So you want to take a look at spell availability here. You want to see, do I have, or does someone on my team have, a spell that will lock down the person we're diving against, that will prevent them from being able to escape? A good stun, a good disable. At the same time, you also want to look at your ability to do immediate damage. One of the most important things to think about when you're tower diving is how quickly you're going to be able to kill the enemy hero. So if you need to close a distance or something like that and don't have a spell that's going to allow you to do that, think again. I've seen so many times, like a Sven or something who has no mana for stun, just run at an enemy near a tower, because obviously they're at full health and the enemy is at low health or something like that, but then the enemy hero just runs away because nobody can stun him, nobody can stop him. Even though Sven would kill him in one hit, he's not going to get that hit off. So be sure you think about whether or not you're in a situation where you can lock someone down. The third thing you want to think about is, can I recover and continue doing whatever it is my hero is doing? Roaming, farming, supporting, etc. Meaning, let's say you're playing a Phantom Assassin or something like that, a real good late game carry, and you're tower diving against someone, and you manage to kill them, but you end up with no health, and you have no regen items, and you have to run all the way back to the fountain afterwards. Keep that sort of thing in mind. That kill might not actually pay for itself if it ends up taking away your ability to do something more important to you during the game. The fourth thing you want to think about is, who am I diving against? There are a lot of heroes that are way easier and way better to dive against than others, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And the fifth and final thing, and in some ways the most important thing, is where is the enemy's team? If you're in a lane and you're diving and 4 of them are missing, chances are you're going to get jumped at the tower. Someone's going to TP in, etc. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about heroes who are good at diving, heroes who are good to dive against, heroes who are bad to dive against, and finally heroes who make diving more realistic for you, basically can help you from far away. Let's start by talking about heroes you want to avoid dying against. In general, anyone who's got any sort of AoE silence or slow ability is a much more risky person to dive against. Same with AoE stuns and that kind of thing. Anything that makes you have to stay at the tower longer than you want or removes your ability to do immediate damage, like we were talking about earlier, is someone you want to avoid. Heroes like that include Warlock. Not a good hero to dive against, especially if he's got his ult up, because it can just wreck you at the tower. Probably the worst hero I've found ever to dive against is the Undying. He's just got an ability to heal himself if need be, an ability to sap your strength, making your health lower near the tower. It's just bad news. And then Tombstone. Tombstone is really, really powerful from a map control and a locational standpoint, unless, your team is able to kill it. But if you're trying to dive an Undying, you don't want to have to choose between killing the Tombstone and killing the Undying when a tower's right next to you, like, wailing on you. It's a bad idea. It's something you want to avoid completely. Other heroes who are bad to die against, who are a little more situational, any hero that's got an ability that does really, really well against a small group of heroes in isolation. So think about someone like the Witch Doctor. His stun, his gasket, obviously works really, really well when there are just 2 or 3 of you and your friends and no other creeps or anything like that. Because when you're diving, you're basically going to be by yourself. You're not really considering creep positioning. Other heroes like that include Lich. He can ult you really, really easily if it's just you and a buddy next to a tower and you get hit by a full-on Lich ult and it does all the bounces on you. It's not going to end well for you. Enigma, also a very dangerous hero to dive against. Not only does he have a stun, but he has all sorts of AoE abilities that end up locking you down or resulting in massive losses of health very, very quickly. So you have to be very careful diving against a hero like that. Likewise, a hero like the Silencer might take away your ability to do that immediate damage. You have to be careful about that. Heroes like Luna, who have a strong spell that works against individual heroes in isolation, are also dangerous to dive against. You can pretty easily check their mana, make sure they can't do it before you go ahead and try to kill them, but you still have to be careful. Juggernaut obviously works in a very similar way. You have to be very careful when diving against a Juggernaut, not only because he can make himself immune to spells, but he can throw down that healing ward, he can ult you, so definitely be sure to check the mana there, make sure you're not running into trouble. Other heroes to watch out for include Rikimaru, who is one of the most tempting heroes to dive against. He's got the cloud ability, big AoE silence, slow, etc. You don't want to dive into a cloud. It really can end very poorly for your team. Likewise, strong disablers like the Bane Elemental, he can hold you in place next to the tower. He's got an ability that saps your health. It's really bad to dive against a Bane unless you're sure he's got no mana and you're sure you're going to be able to lock him down, kill him right away. On a similar note, watch out for the Shadow Shaman. He can hex you, grab you, wards near the tower can be very, very devastating. Be careful in general diving against Shadow Shaman. So yeah, this isn't a complete list, and obviously any hero can be dangerous if you dive against them at the wrong time, but some of the ones I've mentioned are probably a little harder to handle than others, closer to the immovable object status, as it were. When you're diving, you always want to be the unstoppable force. You want to be someone who's going to get that kill no matter what and leave your opponent just like with their hands up in the air like there was nothing I could do. Absolutely nothing I could do. So let's talk about some heroes who are really good for diving. Again, talking about the idea of immediate damage. Huskar is a good hero in terms of immediate damage and because he can recover really well after diving. If they have a low health hero near the tower and you're able to ult in, you can kill them very, very fast without them being able to do too much about it. And then you can immediately activate your own regeneration and kind of get out of there. So he can be very good. If you've got a BKB, obviously you're 10 times better at diving because they can't disable you. That's the only thing you really have to worry about if you're in a favorable diving situation with Huskar is them disabling you in some way after you've ulted. Other good heroes for diving, the Night Stalker, very, very strong at night for obvious reasons. He can silence an enemy hero, can really lock them down. Let's see, the Chaos Knight is very, very good at diving as well, because he has the ability to both lock down an enemy hero and to do immediate damage, meaning if you pull them in using Reality Rift and then stun them, you're immediately going to be hitting them and they are a lot less likely to escape. So very powerful hero for diving. Likewise, and not necessarily in the same way, the Vengeful Spirit can be very, very powerful for diving, just because you have positional control with her ult. You can take an enemy hero, swap them out of the tower, into your teammates, stun them, etc. Or, even if it's not advantageous to use your ult, you can run in, stun, and just immediately start hitting because you're ranged. A really good sort of setup hero with teammates. Other good people for diving include the Lycanthrope. Your ult makes you so fast, increases your DPS so much that you can close the distance between you and an enemy hero very rapidly. Other great heroes for diving are heroes that are capable of massive amounts of burst damage. Queen of Pain is a classic example of this. You obviously can blink in, closing the distance very, very rapidly, allowing you to do that immediate damage, and then you've got several abilities that just hurt people very fast. So if you see, that enemy hero sitting at the tower with 200 health, dive in, ult, they're immediately dead, and then run away. Or, likewise, you can use your ult the other way around depending on the favorability of the situation. Like, let's say you're working with a stunner can lock someone down. You can actually run in, do your damage, and then blink away. So, Queen of Pain, very strong hero for diving. Also, a great diving hero is the Brewmaster. The Brewmaster is very survivable because of his ult, and you basically, if you manage to farm yourself a Blink Dagger, you can start doing that immediate damage. You can blink on someone, Thunderclap, ult, and then lock them down with the Q spell on the Earth Panda. Kill someone very, very quickly, putting yourself at virtually no risk. Very, very strong diving hero. And then there's Faceless Void. Faceless Void is also a very strong diving hero, almost exclusively on account of his ult. If you don't have your ult up, you don't want to consider diving, but if you do, obviously, you can run in, catch someone off guard who thinks they're safe by the tower, kill them, and just walk away. It's very, very satisfying. Finally, someone like Bloodseeker, a very powerful diving hero, because not only do you have an ability that just inherently lets you know when an enemy is at low health, you can lock down their ability to go anywhere with your ultimate, and when you kill that enemy hero, you get a bunch of health back, which gets rid of that regeneration problem we talked about earlier. Of course, if you're working with a team, you run the risk of someone else getting the kill, and you have to be aware of that, but still, very strong diving hero. Now, despite the fact, again, that I'm recommending these heroes for diving, there's a whole lot of wiggle room. A lot of heroes can dive really well just depending on the situation, but these ones seem to be a little more inherently gifted than a lot of other heroes. So let's talk about heroes on your team who also make diving more appealing, regardless of their presence on the map. For example, if you've got a Zeus on your team, where are you, Zeus? There's Zeus. If you've got a Zeus on your team, at the beginning or end of a dive, he can use his ultimate, just do guaranteed damage from any spot on the map, and set up a kill really easily for you, or finish off a kill, get rid of kind of the one that got away. Ancient Apparition functions in a similar way. If you've got a good Ancient Apparition on your team, they can obviously launch an ult. It's really good, actually, for kicking off a tower dive attempt, especially if he does it from cross map, so the radius is really big. He can just ult the tower, hit in a huge area around it. It slows down the person you're trying to kill. It prevents him from being able to heal, which is supremely important. If you time it just right, obviously during the duration of them being frozen, even if you get them just to low health and they manage to survive it, it will still kill them. Likewise, Nature's Prophet can be really, really helpful in diving situations. He can teleport in from anywhere on the map. His ultimate, even though it's kind of unpredictable, can still do that cross-map damage. So he's a very good hero to have on your team. And if you do have one on your team, let him know you're about to dive or something like that. Give him a ping or something, and he can see if there's a situation where he needs to teleport in to finish someone off. Spectre, also very, very good for that. Spectre's ult can allow the Spectre to just jump right into a situation and turn the tides or finish someone off. So Spectre is another one of those heroes who, if you have them on your team and you're considering a dive, it makes it a better idea overall. So let's talk about a couple of heroes who function in the opposite way. If they're on your opponent's team, it makes it a lot less appealing to dive. Nature's Prophet actually is one of those heroes as well, because they can TP in after you've dived the tower and then just trap you. Omni Knight also is a bad hero to have on the opposite team if you're considering a dive. He can obviously, if he teleports in and ults, that's the end of your dive, and you're also going to be in a lot of trouble if he's got his slow aura. So you have to be careful. Dazzle functions in a very similar way. Let's say you've got someone who you're definitely going to kill, and then suddenly Shallow Grave is cast, and they're just going to keep running, and you're going to keep putting yourself more and more at risk. Again, the longer a tower dive takes, the worse, the more likely it is that you will fail and that big bad things will happen to you. Chen is also someone you want to keep an eye out for. I guess both offensively and defensively. If you do have a Chen on your team, it makes tower diving more appealing because he can ult and heal you if you get into a bad situation. But likewise, it works the opposite way. If you're diving against a team with a Chen, it makes your likelihood of success much, much slimmer because his ult can take away that guaranteed kill. So yeah, take a look at the beginning of the game of the roster of your team and the other team and weigh out the likelihood of you wanting to dive in advance a bit. If you say to yourself, I'm a hero who's not very good at diving inherently, I'm a little too squishy, I don't have a way to lock down enemies, I can't do immediate damage to someone who's next to a tower. If their team has lots of support with Chen and Dazzle and Omni or something like that, any one of those heroes, the tree, for instance, good lord, don't dive against the tree, then just at the beginning of the game think, okay, if I see a dive situation, I'm probably just going to ignore it because there's too many things that could go wrong here. But if you see favorable circumstances, if you're one of the heroes I just mentioned as being very good at diving, if they don't have a lot of support on their team, if you have an ally with you or you yourself can lock the enemy hero in place, then say, okay, this game, when diving situations arrive, I think I'm going to go for them. I think it's a good idea. So now that we've talked about all this theory and that sort of thing, let's take a look at some very specific in-game examples. So here's an example of a dive against a Medusa. Medusa's typically not the best hero to dive against because she's got mana shield, which makes her extra tanky. Her ult can slow people down. She can drain mana, making her even more powerful. But in this situation, as you can see, we have everything we need to bring her down. The person who probably did the most diving there was this Chaos Knight right here, who went in, knew they were going to take the tower aggro, locked in the stun to guarantee the kill. But you'll notice that the Chaos Knight here was carrying a health potion. So boom, they're right back in the game. They can go straight back down, continue farming, and let's just go through it one more time, perhaps a little slower, so we can get a good idea of exactly what occurred here. Alright, so Medusa at this point is sort of pushing, free farming, obviously a bad thing, you don't want Medusa to be able to do that. Spirit Breaker arrives back in mid, our Spirit Breaker was in mid the entire time. Nyx coming down from the top, ult is activated, full mana can unload everything, maxed out, or nearly maxed out stun. So Spirit Breaker's going to open with the charge, simultaneously Nyx is going to ult. All of Medusa's mana's gone. Then Chaos Knight comes in from the bottom with that stun to seal the deal. So a really, really strong situation where we were guaranteed to get the kill despite the fact that we were dealing with a tower so nearby. Now, one of the other great ways to tower dive is to take advantage of long-range skills, particularly from unexpected areas like the woods in mid. In this case, a Mirana arrow. Now, Dusa, in this case, taking damage from that tower, but can go in, grab that kill really easily because Spirit Breaker's not going anywhere for a while, already at low health, took damage from an unexpected source, locked in place. Dusa gets the kill super easily there. So one of the heroes who is probably the best at tower diving, but also the best at making a mistake at tower diving with, is the Spirit Breaker, and we're about to see a good example of when things can go wrong. So at this point, the Spirit Breaker is basically charging just to get across the map. This isn't really a decision to dive yet. He's going for Ricky. He's got the dust. That's really, really great. Love it when a Spirit Breaker has dust like that. If you're playing against Ricky, you should always have dust. So he charges in, gets a stun from Nyx, an ult off. Great situation. Ricky looks like he's going down here, but Ricky blinks. Very, very conscious decision. There are so many enemy heroes here. Nyx decides to back off, a wise decision. Spirit Breaker keeps chasing, and all it gets him is death. Despite the fact that that Ricky looked so low, so easy to kill. It just wasn't meant to be. So let's watch that again, just in slow motion, sort of see what really goes wrong here. So again, I talked about Vengeful Spirit being kind of a bad hero to dive against. In this case, Vengeful Spirit doesn't have much mana, so she's not going to be able to really get a stun off. But Mirana's TPing in this case, you know, things are looking good. But that arrow, the moment that arrow hit, Spirit Breaker probably should have backed off. Just immediately. This situation, not going to end well for us. For the diving team. Instead, Spirit Breaker goes for Ricky. Ricky utilizes Cloud. I talked about Cloud earlier as being one of the most devastating spells to prevent people from being able to dive well. And then Mirana just finishes things off. So yeah, be careful. Don't be greedy. Don't dive against a Ricky, especially when he's got support. So here's an example of a situation where a good situation turns into a worse one because of a dive. So Spirit Breaker is coming in from the top to gank DOTA here. Nyx initiates perfect stun. Mirana is going to die here very, very easily. Okay, this is great. Great situation has happened here. Mirana's dead. We are very happy about that if we are the Radiant team. DOTA is escaping. The temptation here would be to chase DOTA, but the awareness factor would basically prompt you to think that that's not maybe the best idea. First and foremost, DOTA is a tanky hero inherently with mana shield. She obviously doesn't have much mana right now, but she can still turn that on. It can provide a bit of a shield. Second, the heroes who are on the Radiant, with the exception of Spirit Breaker, are basically out of mana. In addition to that, you know, Chaos Knight is very low on health. He's not going to be much good in a chase here. Spirit Breaker has also just used his ultimate. Sure, he's got charge, that's great stun, but at the same time, it's not enough to really guarantee the damage required here. Nyx has just blown his entire load completely. You really can't do anything. So here's how this is going to play out. Oh, and the other thing to keep in mind again is map awareness. You know, let's switch it to player perspective here real quick. And let's grab Spirit Breaker. So, Spirit Breaker can see, in this case, that there's an Enchantress up here. But that is all that Spirit Breaker can see, even though this is showing up on the minimap, he can't actually see that. He knows that Mirana's dead because we just killed them, but all the other heroes are missing. And one of those heroes is a Vengeful Spirit, and another is a Ricky, both of whom are heroes that can ruin a tower diver's day. So let's watch how this plays out from the Spirit Breaker's point of view. You know, run after a bit, Nyx immediately turns around, so does CK, Spirit Breaker charges in, the mistake was already made. A TP from Vengeful Spirit guarantees the kill on the Spirit Breaker. And what could have been a 1-for-0 trade is turned into a 1-for-2 trade. So, or I'm sorry, a 1-for-1 trade. So here's an example from another game, and I'm going to start a little early on it just to give full context to the situation. So, the Radiant is pushing the Dire. The Dire's Spirit Breaker comes in, does a little bit of damage. A Kunkka follows up. You know, Boats misses as Kunkkas usually do. You know, Leshrac goes down. Several other Dire heroes are coming in. A bunch of Radiant heroes are low, in trouble, running away. And the Dire decide to chase. All 5 of them chase, I think. 4 of them chase. But there's an Undying there. Undying throws up the tombstone. And if you recall, I mentioned Undying is one of the worst heroes possible to dive against. He gets back up from the Sand King. But the tombstone just basically wrecks everybody. Nobody can kind of go anywhere. The AoE effects from Undying's ult and his strength drain are prolific. And suddenly 4 heroes are dead. All of the good that the Dire team just did is basically turned right around and thrown back in their face. So let's try watching that one again, and let's watch it from the Undying's standpoint. All right. In this case, lots of pinging occurring from the Undying. He's aware that bad things are about to happen to his teammates, and is watching them, watching his team fall to pieces. And look at that. Other things to note are several ultimates have been used from the Dire heroes. So a lot of their spell capabilities are diminished here. You should not be rushing past a tower when ultimates are not available. So Undying is in place. Look at how low all of these heroes are. And 1 down, 2 down, 3 down, 4 down. So be very, very careful when diving against an Undying who is missing, and when diving when a lot of your spells are not available. It will end badly for you, I promise you. So let's just have a final example that's pretty fun. This is how to tower dive without risking your safety at all whatsoever. You remember earlier I talked a bit about Zeus and Ancient Apparition being good heroes to have on your team, heroes that make diving more palatable. This is the sort of thing that can happen to poor members of the opposite team if, you know, they underestimate just how potent those two heroes can be as a combination. Look at poor Sven. Ugh, poor guy. So that about wraps it up for this episode. I hope you liked what you saw, and I hope you'll keep some of these principles in mind the next time you decide to tower dive in the middle of a pub game. Ghoster.com has more video content coming in the future, so I do hope you'll subscribe to our channel, and have fun.